Recorded at the studios of Chicago Public Media, WBEZ, this is Stages to Success. The drive to excel is universal, as is the pride in a job well done. Whether you're staring down a decision maker for a multi-million-dollar contract, a television camera or microphone, a negotiating adversary, or an irate conductor, the pressure to perform can be exhilarating and exhausting. Join me and meet great storytellers from music and business. Today's episode focuses on the microeconomics of real estate. The immigrant tenant businessman turned owner-user is a large legacy to commercial real estate asset holding in America. To illustrate this concept is today's guest, Herb Koshgarian of Koshgarian Rug Cleaners, whose family started this business in the 19-teens. The small company grew to the point where it assembled parcels, built its own building, sold that building, and then began to purchase and operate in greater real estate endeavors. Herb and I began by speaking about our friend in common, who strangely bridges the two universes of this podcast. Thanks again for agreeing to do this.
Sure.
I don't know if you remember the person that we had in common was Spike Shaw. You may have known him as Lowell Shaw from high school.
No. Yeah, he was a classmate of mine.
Yeah, and it was just sort of it was such a random thing to run in on the real estate deal. And here's a guy I sat in front of for 8 years in the Buffalo Philharmonic, and he's your friend from high school in Chicago.
Yeah.
And you were both at
I remember him. He played. I think he did play an instrument.
Yeah,
the
French horn was he was a killer French horn player.
Yeah, right, exactly. I remember all that.
Yeah, and he ended up being really world famous as a publisher of French horn music in addition to his playing career. And
how do you?
Yeah, great.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
stop and think about it.
Yeah.
You don't hear about these things, and no, I remember him distinctly. I really do. I know who he is. Yep.
And you guys are from that. Lyons Township High School has more alumni activity than most colleges I know.
Yep. We had a group that met called the Time Machine. And we would meet in Florida in the wintertime, and all the classmates that were, didn't matter what year that you graduated, we would meet in Florida for a lunch and reminisce and talk about things. And we got together all up till about, maybe 5-6 years ago. We would meet in Florida. And in fact, there was groups that met in Arizona. And I don't know if it was some in California, but I know in Arizona for sure. We went to a Time Machine gathering and saw our old classmates, and we are very close. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember he came into town, into Chicago, and we got together, my wife and his wife and I, and he said that he was in town for his 60th reunion. I said, I didn't even know you went to college out here. He said, no, high school. I said, who goes to their high school reunion from across the country? He said, well, you just don't understand LT.
No, well, I headed that up. I was the one in charge of the reunion. Luckily, I still have my friends that I played football with, and I don't know about the ones that I wrestled with, but we did that. So.
And your class of
47.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's that football.
Go ahead.
That football and the wrestling must be the key to the longevity there.
I guess so. I loved wrestling. Football was great. I played varsity football my sophomore year. Believe it or not, I was a sophomore and I was on the first string varsity team along with juniors and seniors. And then I took up wrestling. A coach said, well, you have to wrestle in order to be a good football player. That was a great sport. I loved it. We really had to be in good shape to be a wrestler because So
Well,
that was that.
wrestling I can believe, but I've seen you at football in high school. You probably played at about, 150 pounds?
No, I kept my weight at about 165.
Uh-huh.
165. I don't think. In fact, I wrestled at 165, so I was right around there.
Yeah, well, the boys playing for LT now in those kind of positions probably have 100 pounds on you, but,
Oh
we
yeah.
won't go there.
Yeah. No. Yeah, you are kidding. That's for sure. No, we were lucky if we averaged. I think if everybody on the team, we took all of our weights, we probably might average at about 180 pounds.
Yeah.
That was about it. So.
Yeah, well, you're still alive, so that's
So,
big part of it.
My 90th birthday is coming up December 18th. So.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, John.
I want to wind the clock back. You told me about your Armenian immigrant parents coming to this area. Were they part of this huge exodus after the genocide that occurred there?
The way my parents talked to me about it was that first of all, my dad. Let's maybe give you a little bit of his background.
Sure.
He, because of the genocide, the way the Turks would come in and randomly on any certain day, or it doesn't matter. They just let's go get the Armenians, that kind of a thing, and they would come in and go to the houses, and if there were any Armenian boys there, they would take them out, either put them into service, into the military. Or I don't know if they would have killed them or not, but my dad was one of those, and he had three other brothers, so they were all there in what is known as Aintab, Aintab, Turkey, which is now known as Gaziantep. If you look on your map, just north of Aleppo, Syria.
Oh.
So Dad would, he told me a couple of times, he said what we would do is if we knew the Turks were coming, we'd get the roofs in their homes were flat roofs, so they were able to get up on the roof. And he said, well, what we would do is get a lot of hot water. We'd get boiling water, and the Turks would come up to the door and knock on the door, and we'd pour the water on them and run, and we'd run up into the hills and where the grapevines were, and we'd hide in amongst the grapevines and until the Turks left. And then he told me, he said, then what I did was my brothers left Turkey, Aintab, and I left, and he told me his story of getting on the ship and going to Cairo, Italy, through to Gibraltar, into New York City. And he said he got himself a job there. In fact, he got a job with some Greek cook in a restaurant. And he said, boy, I didn't like that. So I left, and I left there and came to Evanston, Illinois, only because his two other brothers were there.
I'm interested why the brothers went to Evanston, Illinois, of all places. What takes two Armenian boys to Evanston and your dad?
I would have to guess there are a lot of Armenians there.
Really?
That's all I know of. There were groups of Armenians, all from Aintab, Turkey, this far line. They were friends of my father, friends of classmates of the brothers, and that's where they wound up.
And you, forgive my ignorance. What language did they speak? Is there an Armenian language?
Oh, yeah. See, the Armenian. Yeah, there is. There's Armenian language, but because of the Turks controlling the country, especially at that time, you had to speak Turkish because you did look a little like a Turk, I guess, because if you look like some pictures of my great-grandfathers, they dress all like Turks.
Okay.
With the fez and the mustaches, and I got pictures of them, and it's they even dress like them because they had to. If you did not, and they recognize you maybe as an Armenian, they would get their dander up. The Turks would, well, we don't like the Armenians because they're too business-minded. They're too intelligent. They're kicking us out of our own businesses, and therefore, come on, let's get rid of them.
Your mom does. She's like a star of this story. So
Yeah,
I do want to hear. Did she end up in that little enclave of people from that area in Evanston as well?
Now, here's what happened. I've had news articles from Madison, Wisconsin. I've got people that have been helping me on this, and there's an article about she had a cousin in Evanston in the rug business. I'm sorry, back up. He was in Madison, Wisconsin. His name is a Gulesserian, and he had a rug business there. A cousin of my mother and the whole family. So the article that I have said that this cousin, Edward Gulesserian, is expecting relatives from Turkey, and they have to, in a joking way, they say, how do we add on to our house, because there's four other people coming here, and they're our cousins. So what happened was my mother and her two sisters left Turkey, again, left Eintop, went to Paris, stayed there until they could get a visa to come to the United States. They came to the States and went to Madison, Wisconsin, and stayed there, living with a cousin. So now this is two sisters, and if I'm not mistaken, the article said even the small brother came along. My Uncle Jack came along with them. So now they're there. All I know is my mom told me the story. She said, well, here's what happened. She said, your father was living in Evanston, probably with his brothers, because I'm sure that's what they did. And he found out that I was in Evanston. So he somehow gets to Madison, Wisconsin, and courts my mother. Now, there wasn't a big courtship, because she said, I was engaged to someone else, but I remember your father being so handsome, so strong. I broke my engagement, and I married him. Now, they got married in 1920 in Evanston, Illinois.
Wow. I want to, all these Armenian names end with this Aryan, Arian.
Right.
Is that sort of like in Norwegian where you have son at the end, John's son? Is that the suffix, how that works?
Yeah, right. In fact, I believe what happened was when my dad and maybe his brothers, I don't know how this came about, but if they changed the spelling of the Koshgarian name. It was spelled Kushgarian, Koshgar, and that means shoemaker.
Oh.
So anyhow, they get married and come to Evanston and live in Evanston. And the interesting story that comes about from that episode, roughly the 1920s, early 20s, very early. They're living in Evanston, and his older brother, believe it or not, started a business in LaGrange at what is known as 11 West Hillgrove in LaGrange. Okay, so now his brother is there and running a business. I've got pictures of all that too. And
good, we'll get that on the website.
Yeah. So, the brother, and I don't know if you know this, but you probably do. LaGrange had a streetcar. Did you know that?
Yeah, you told me about that.
Okay, the streetcar, goes from Brainerd Avenue up to Cicero Avenue in Cicero, and for one foggy morning, according to the story that I know of, he and my cousin James Koshgarian, he's probably about maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. They're on the streetcar going east, and the streetcar always cross the Indiana Harbor Beltline, which is still active, as you know.
Yes.
And it's a foggy morning, and the train hits the streetcar, kills my uncle. My cousin survives, and in fact, I have the death certificate of that. And he survives. The widow, of course, now is alone, supposedly running the business. I doubt if she did, but she, and evidently this is part of my story. This is the only way it could have worked out. She either called or went up to the brothers up in Evanston. There's 3 of them up there now. One already has his own business. The other one, I don't know what was wrong with him, but he was not interested. And my mom said, yeah, we'll buy the business from you. So, again, I have documents on the purchase of what they bought from the widow. And so they come to LaGrange, 19, probably right after they got married, and they're running the business out of this house at 11 West Hillgrove.
Now, Herb, is part of this? You mentioned the rug and the carpet industry already. Is part of this from the old country because of the the Turkish textiles and these rugs? Okay, that's interesting.
Knew all about. They knew how to repair. They did. The Turkish people did weave rugs. There were rugs woven in Turkey, but next door to Turkey is, of course, Iran. Mm-hmm. And Iran is a well-known weaver of rugs. The cities there, I mean, you could name a city, and I could name a rug called Saruk, Isfahan. These are all Persian names, and they take the name from the city that the rugs are woven in.
Fascinating.
Kashan, you name them all. Isfahan, they're all names of the cities of Iran. And so there was a big industry as far as weaving of Oriental rugs.
So your family gets to the United States at quite an opulent time for the wealthy here in the 20s, and you've got a built-in business. Folk, the well-off have these Persian, Turkish rugs.
Oh yeah, that's about all there was.
Yeah, and and your family services these things. That's really interesting.
That's correct. That's exactly what they did. And Dad was very good at repairing and weaving. He could weave. He could repair rugs. Of course, he did cleaning. But if you could imagine, back then, the only way you could clean rugs either by I have movies. I had made some movies of him showing us the initial way that they would hand clean a rug. I mean, on your hands and knees, you would put the rug down on the floor, and according to my mom's letter to a deposition she had to give, they wind up with a barn behind at 11 West Hillgrove. They wind up having a barn behind them, and that's where they did their rug cleaning. But if you can imagine, they had no way of drying the rug except to bring it either in the summertime. Anytime the weather was decent, they would lay them out on the pavement or hang them on a pole and to dry it. And in the winter, they'd bring the rugs into the house. That's what she said. They'd bring them into this little house and dry the rug. Riverside, Berwyn were very, occupied. Many residents there compared to LaGrange. So Dad would. I have a picture of an old Model T truck that he has, and in fact, the initials on the truck are his brother's initials, not even his. And it's known as H.H. Koshgarian, which are my initials. But my dad's name was Mayron, standing for Michael, and his initials would have been M.H. Koshgarian, Rug and Carpet Cleaners, or however he wanted to identify his company name, you know.
So he was using a truck. That's interesting because what I was imagining was them using the trolley lines to actually move the product. Okay, so you had that going on too.
He told me, he did tell me that he would go by, sometimes he would take the train into Berwyn, but you got to remember, John, that everything that was built along the Burlington Northern was because of the Burlington Northern. All the homes, apartments, if there were apartments, stores, from Chicago all the way to Aurora, were built along the Burlington.
Right.
And in fact, we would sort of, if I was thinking about it, but this is bringing you up to about the 1950s, right after the war, when in fact, right after the war, LaGrange Highlands began to be developed, as you know, and to us, it was almost like being in another county. You mean you have to drive all the way to 55th Street and pick up a rug? You know, everything was so local. You know, we didn't. We would, not that we wouldn't want the business, but it was very strange to us to have to travel so far to pick up and rugs. But LaGrange Highlands was some of the first development done around in the LaGrange, in the suburbs. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In the suburbs.
And you know, for our listeners who don't know the Chicago area, what we're talking about is what now the line is the Metro line for commuting. Burlington still uses it, of course, Burlington Northern.
Absolutely.
But that commuting train, the trolley no longer exists, but the commuting train runs straight east-west with these bedroom communities, and still, economically, for the businessmen and women going downtown, the walk to the train is a very big seller for their house value, for the ease of use. In your dad's case, it developed a business travel that actually, if you go all the way to Berwyn and Riverside, that's quite a distance. But you're using the train, and that's his alleyway for commuting and for doing accounts. Now,
that's correct.
You told me this story, and this is where I think it really gets interesting, about your mother basically helped your dad run his books and kind of ran the brains of his business.
She was. You're exactly right. He had, I don't know if I said this already, but he only had about a sixth grade education.
No.
In fact, upon his death, some of his friends from back in Turkey, back in Eintop, were there, and they said, "I remember your dad, how strong he was, but he could not go to school because the Turks knew where the Armenian boys were." Okay, so he had about a sixth grade education, and I'm sorry to say this to you, but his English was bad. He could not hardly speak English, but he was able to communicate enough to run a business. But my mother she was the brains of the whole thing. She did all the bookkeeping, paid all the bills, did all the ordering, but she was the brains and he was the brawn. That's the way I always told people about it.
And her what was your mom's name, first name?
Mary.
So Mary Koshgarian gets it in her mind, oh my goodness, over here near 11 Hillside, there's a few properties, we could put these together. And she does the classic commercial real estate assemblage. Tell how she went and made the deal with those other neighbors and put this concept together. And we'll get to the finance of it in a minute. But how did she get this idea and run with it?
All I remember her telling me, and this is her words to me, was, and she said, I heard that at the next door property, was just west of us, was for sale. And I know it's a double lot. It's not a single lot. It's for sale for $4,000. Mm-hmm. And God knows how she accumulated $4,000 in 3 or 4 years, because if you look, I have a picture of at the house at 11 Hillgrove that says a 9 by 12 Oriental rug will be cleaned for $4, and a 9 by 12 domestic rug $2.50.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but anyhow, so she winds up finding this out that the property is for sale, and she says, "I'm going to go buy it." So I could visualize this. This is just my visualization of what my mom would have looked like. She probably didn't even tell me, Dad, she's going to do this, but she probably had a long black coat with a babushka on her head and went over to the LaGrange State Bank there on the Grange Road and walked in and said, I guess she must have talked to one of the officers there at the bank and said that I want to buy the property next door. I understand it's for sale. I have the $4,000 here, and I'd like to purchase it. And insultingly enough, the gentleman says, "Where did you get $4,000?"
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you be? I don't know if I told you that, but it was so insulting to her. And she said, "Well, I have it, and here it is, and I want to buy it." So she bought the house. She bought the property, and they decided that she decided. I don't think my dad had any instance of adding to the conversation that she said, what we're going to do is we're going to build 3 stores and 4 apartments above that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay. So they built it. They rented out all the stores, and I have a photograph of that. Rented out all the stores and lived in the apartment above, and vacated the house. I don't even know if they owned the house, but they obviously vacated the house, lived in an apartment, rented out the 3 other apartments. So that was that, and all of a sudden now the Depression hits. Now what do? You can't rent the apartments. So she said, okay, what we're going to do is we'll divide the apartments up into sleeping rooms.
Amazing.
And so happened that the dining room, bedroom, and kitchen would be one apartment. The living room we would close off the wall between the dining room and the living room and make the front living room a bedroom, a sleeping room, and the other bedroom we'll make that another rentable sleeping room for anybody that wants to rent it. And so from that point on, until, oh my goodness, I even lived in one of the small apartments after we were married, but they never did revert back to the 3 other apartments. So one apartment that we lived in stayed the same: living room, dining room, kitchen, 1 bath, and 2 bedrooms. So I lived there until about 1950 when Mom decided that I want to move out of an apartment. I want to live in a house, and they went up to North Edgewood, 437 North Edgewood, bought a home there, and they lived there for a few years. After that, she decides that she doesn't want to live there anymore, and finds out that on South Edgewood, 638 South Edgewood, there's 2.5 acres for sale there. It's a farm with a lot of acreage, and she buys that.
Wow.
I don't know what the heck. I don't know how, John. I don't know how she did it. All I know is I remember some of the things that we did. This is a few years later. Was everything? Well, we'll just go to LaGrange Federal and borrow the money. I have enough asset and liquidity in the apartments. We'll just put the apartments up as collateral, and the stores of the apartments for collateral, and borrow the money and buy the property.
Your mother is, a true real estate entrepreneur, Herb, and in the truest sense of the word, and the listeners to this podcast are going to hear loud and clear from episode 1 of this year about the micro apartment development. Now, this is to wealthy young people in the city of Chicago, but your mom is seeing the genius in the smaller divisions during the Depression, the reason being because it's an affordable price point, and sees the opportunity and does it, which it will really ring clear to the people that listen to Alex Samoilovich's micro episode. And just to flip forward, that Koshgarian building still has the K on it at the front.
MK
in LaGrange.
Mayron Koshgarian, my father's initials.
Right, and I represented State Farm as the tenant representative doing a lease in that building not too long ago.
Yeah.
So your mother has brought an asset to the community. The apartments are still rented, very nice.
Yeah.
The tenancies are still solid. This is almost 100 years.
Yep, it is.
And
right.
That and then what your parents did, and that's part of this theme of this episode, this concept of live work for the immigrant businesses that came in. At first were tenants usually, then they buy a little bit more, then they buy the strip mall they're in. The Greek restaurants in Chicago are famous for this. They'll become a tenant in a strip mall, then they buy their spot, then they buy the mall itself. They become a landlord. They do second locations, third locations. And in your case, I imagine the plant was on site where you did the work, right? In LaGrange.
Yeah, what they did was they built the apartment building, and in the back they built a rug cleaning plant you could park 2 trucks in the garage, but it was at least 80 feet east to west and at least 20 feet north and south, and that was our rug cleaning plant, and that's where we had advanced to scrubbing with a rotary brush scrubber with detergents, waters, detergents, wring out the rug through a large wringer and pull it through, and it would come through the machine, and you take it to the pole, and that's how I got. When my coach saw me with my muscles and my shoulders and everything, he said, "Holy cow, how did you get so big?" Well, I didn't exercise because we had to pull the rugs up on a pulley about 20 feet up into the air. So, 20 poles times 20 times you pull the rope. That's 400 poles. You got yourself a good workout.
Yeah, I love how you say you didn't exercise, Herb. Just like the kids in Minnesota that I knew that worked on a farm didn't exercise lifting and bailing. Your business was exercise. Yeah. This is your host, John Hunter. If you, your company, or your organization would like to sponsor our real estate episodes, you can have an internal advertisement placed in the podcast. Please contact me at john@jhunterservices.com. Stages to Success can be found on TuneIn Radio, Google Play, iTunes, or our RSS feed. The link can be found at www.stagestosuccesspodcast.com. Try telling your Amazon Echo to play it by commanding Play Stages to Success Podcast. We're listening to an interview with Herb Koshgarian, the second-generation owner of Koshgarian Rug Cleaners in suburban Chicago, and more importantly, Mary Koshgarian's son. When did you yourself decide to take over the family's business?
Okay, that's an easy question. Here's what happened. It's a great story. And I don't know, how my mom did it. Now, you got to remember that the war had just ended, and my uncle worked at Electromotive building tanks. So he didn't have a job. He wasn't married. And she said, "Come on, you could work for me." And so they worked with me and my mom. And Dad winds up going to Florida, and then the following year we all go to Florida just as a vacation at Christmas time, and we come back, and then Dad goes again the following year with a friend of his. Then my mom, somehow or other, all I could think of, says, "You know what? I'm going to go to Florida with him too, because I think that he's having too much fun on the beach with all the other couples that are there. He's alone, and I think I'm going to go with him." So they go down, and she said, "You know, why are we staying in a hotel room? Let's go look around for a house." So they go to Coral Gables.
Your mom's amazing.
for $18,300, they buy a 3-bedroom in Coral Gables, Florida. So that was 1950, and then she says, "Well, what we'll do when we're not there, we'll rent it out. We'll get a broker to rent it out." And I said, "That sounds good." So she makes income that way. Now this is 1950-51, and I'm helping out. I like the cleaning because it was physical. I like the hours because you just, as compared to sales. Now, what happened with the sales end of it was that right after the war, she must have said to herself, "You know what? We've been repairing and cleaning rugs now all during the recession and all during the war, and nobody's making rugs anymore because the Bigelow Sanford Carpet Company is making blankets and uniforms for the service that are all going to convert back to rug manufacturing." And then I think she must have known someone down at the Merchandise Mart, because I know she hired a salesman at that time. She does this all on her own. I don't have anything to do with it. She had to drive, and I knew she could drive. She goes to Mr. Portnoy, and she says, "Okay, what do you have black market?" Because at that time, everything was black market. Even, as you know, the vehicles that Ford and Chevy and all of them, you could get cars on the black market. So she buys a roll of carpet and comes home, and she sells it. And she comes to my dad, who was very reluctant for getting into sales. Again, you got to remember, he wasn't that talented, and says, "Okay, yeah, oh." She said, "What happened?" He said, "What happened?" She said, "Well, guess what?" She said, "I bought this roll of carpeting for X number of dollars, and I sold it for this much, and for us, we'd have to probably wash rugs for a whole month to make what I did in one sale." And he said, "Oh my gosh, okay, let's get it." He said, "Let's get into sales, and you could do it." So now we have this building, and we have one tenant in one of the stores, but two of the other stores are. We told the people to move out, and they did, and she converted that into a sales display room for selling rugs and carpeting.
Incredible.
In the meantime, I'm doing the cleaning. I'm helping out with the cleaning, and like I said, I like the hours. I want to do the cleaning alone. And then at that time, the cleaning business became very mechanized, and we no more scrubbing on the floor, no more hand pulleys, the rope and pulleys to pull the rugs up. And we said, let's build a plant. And we said, okay, well, where are we going to go? Well, we said, let's go to look around. So then, lo and behold, we go to Hinsdale, and for $8,000, we buy a piece of land at the corner of Elm and Ogden, 60 by 300 piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, okay, we buy it. And then I think we accumulated enough cash to decide on the equipment we want to buy, which was the same as a Magic Kiss, Blue Shell, Chicago Rug. All these people downtown had these wonderful machines. You very automated and wonderful. I mean, it was just something that you would dream of.
So this kind of this answers my next question. What drove the real estate deal to Ogden Avenue in Hinsdale was the plant. You wanted to build the plant.
Correct.
And it's for again to get to this the concept of the proximity to transportation. Was the 294 built already yet?
Yeah, it might have been.
But it was just barely started.
Yeah.
So you have what we are seeing here is your business is expanding. The mode of transportation, you're certainly not using the trolley anymore. That's gone. But with your trucks and with your fleet, you're on Ogden Avenue, which for our out-of-town listeners, if you get closer into Chicago, is the famous Route 66.
Yep.
You have the 294 Expressway. You have just a little bit south of that, you have 55, and now your plant that's more mechanized, that you have a larger fleet servicing, has shifted the business and you've put it there. And we'll get to what became of that location. At that point, Herb, your family is controlling the Koshgarian building in the Grange.
Oh, yeah.
And this new plant. When did you decide to build the office building where another one of my tenants leased from you, the estate and jewelry people? When did you decide to build that office building at that location?
That goes back. That's it. I've been thinking about that. That's real easy. Here's what happened. We buy the plant. We buy the property. 1957. Say this. I know it was the summer of '57. We said, okay, let's get the plans drawn up. So we get our plans drawn, and the idea is again, my mother saying, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build 3 stores and offices above it, and the plant will be in the back.
Yep.
Oh, great. That sounds good. And so we have the plans drawn up, and we're getting ready to build, and have a survey taken, and the surveyor comes back and he says, you know what? He says, your next door neighbor's garage is on your property, and we better talk to him. So we go to Mr. Litchfield and say, Mr. Litchfield, your garage is on our property by about a foot. He said, well, that's too bad. He said, in fact, adverse, what do you call it?
Adverse possession, correct.
Yeah,
it's been there it's been there and not contested, so it says. Yep.
Yeah. So not only that, he said, I've been driving across the back of your property to get to my garage for more than 20 years, which we didn't argue with him about that. It may be true. And he said, so I own that property too. But so so whoa, now we said, oh, now what? So Mom says, I'll tell you what, let's buy the building from him. So we go to Mr. Litchfield, and he's an older gentleman, probably ready for retirement, and likes to fish. And we found that out. And we said, well, Mr. Litchfield, we'd like to buy your property, your house here, which again had apartments in it. It's a big house, just west of where we are. And what do you want for it? He said $35,000, and we said okay. Now again, Mom says, well, here's what we'll do: we'll go to LaGrange Federal, we'll borrow the money, and we'll collect rent from the people, and we'll pay off the loan. So now the building is built in May of '58 is completed. The rug plant is completed, and of course, guess who has to take care of everything? Me.
Mm-hmm.
Not only do I have to do the rug cleaning part of it, but I've got to find tenants for the stores and the offices, which I did, and I was lucky. We had American Tobacco in there. We had McDonald's was building their the McDonald restaurant there on York Road. I had a few other people come in, and we rented. It was real easy to rent. and everybody loved it because we're so close to everything. You just close to downtown Hinsdale, you're close to the roads to go down to Chicago. You're right next to the interstate. So we did that, and now, John. We were not that successful. Just to keep the story straight here, business was not that great. Again, you don't have all the homes that we have in Hinsdale now, and in Clarendon Hills and South Hinsdale. Business was not that good. Okay, in fact, I only had one route truck, although it was a good route, and I had one truck for carpet cleaning, and that was it. And I said, "Holy cow! What do I do now?" I said, "I know what I'll do. I've got some rug cleaning competition." One fellow was in Arlington Heights, and I said, "Mr. Brown," I said, he said, "Herb, you want to do some clean?" We had an association downtown Chicago, the Chicago Rug Cleaners Association, and we would all meet on a monthly basis, and word got around that Mr. Brown in Arlington Heights wants to get out of cleaning, although he has a decent clientele, and wants to get into furniture and carpet sales. And he said, "Herb, will you do my cleaning for me?" I said, "You darn right I will." Well, on a wholesale basis. I said, "Fine. Anything is better than nothing." I have a 50-pole dry room, and I'm filling only 40 to get 10 more poles to pay for the payroll for a couple of guys,
Yeah.
So we did that, and then there was another cleaner, Nahegan, H.C. Nahegan and Sons, near north side of Chicago. He wanted to move up into Skokie, and they were heavy in Oriental rug sales and cleaning. And he came to me, and he said to me, or I came to him, whatever. I said, you want me to do your cleaning for me?" "Yeah." He said, "Do it. Let's do it." So I picked up 2 wholesale accounts and a couple other minor accounts, and at least I was filling up my dry room 2 and 3 times a week, which I was tickled pink to do it. So I had that business. So now, that's again in the early 60s. Mid to late 60s. No, I'm sorry, late 50s and early 60s. Yeah. Now, so now this is now 1961, and I'm in. I think I told you the story, but I'm in my office, and Mom comes in, and I don't know how the hell she did this, but she said, she said, "Herb," I said, "What?" She says, "I got 2 checks here. The spinning wheel across the street was being sold, and there was a Fraser lamp shop there." And she found Don Aaron's, which was an advertising agency, and he wants to expand. And she said, "I have 2 checks here for 2 tenants." And she said, I found an architect. I went to his building. His building, we could lift it up and put it right on our property. It'd be perfect. So we're going to build an office building. I said, "You got to be kidding me." She said, "No, that's what we're going to do." I said, "Okay." And in the meantime, I had rented one of the offices downstairs on the ground floor. We had rented it to a builder. So we gave him the plans, and he said, "Okay." Believe it or not, John, I built that office building for $150,000.
Oh my gosh!
So, the plant I built for $125,000, and it's a specially built plant. It's not even there's no structural steel holding up the roof in any of it. Okay, except the dry room, which is 25 feet high. And you had to have Flexicor there, but the rest of it is all post-stressed concrete. Okay, and I have some movies of that showing how they lifted that into position, because the roof of the rug cleaning plant is poured on the ground and raised into position 10 feet up. So that was that construction. So we built the offices, and went through 1962, and we completed it just in time for Don Aarons and Mr. Fraser to move in. And of course, guess who's the real estate broker? That's me. I got to find tenants, right?
Yeah, right.
We thought, well, gee, it was so easy to rent these offices. Why don't we build some offices above the rug cleaning plant?
Mm-hmm.
And we had plans drawn up, and it didn't feel like it was going to be right. But in the meantime, I'm buying property across the street from me on the east side, behind the auto agency, Art Nelson Auto Agency, and there's a house for sale. I said, well, I'm going to buy that house, and I buy it. And I don't know how I did it, John. I really don't, to tell you the truth. I did that. Then I bought the house next to him, and then I bought the house next to the right behind the rug cleaning plant. And I don't know why I sold them, but I did after a while. The one that right behind the auto agency, 811 North Elm, I bought for $15,000. I sold it for $150 something, but I should have held on to it because it's worth probably a lot more than that. Even that the year I sold it, all of a sudden, late 1965, let's say, I don't know, maybe December, November, I get a phone call from Joe Caruso, a real estate broker, and he says, Herb. I said, what? He said, Art Nelson's building is for sale. Do you want to buy it? I said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought it, and bought it with no money down, borrowed money from Mr. Nelson, took a loan out from him. Mom said, okay, we'll go to LaGrange Federal, and we'll put the apartment building, we'll mortgage that. We'll mortgage this, we'll mortgage that. I don't know what the heck we did, but we mortgaged everything, and the rent paid for all the mortgages.
And you have that Mary Koshgarian gene, Herb. I hear it coming up and now so for our listeners to get a handle on this, at that point you have the Koshgarian building in LaGrange. You have this assemblage that you've put together that's also mixed use in Hinsdale. And you now have purchased the car dealership area where your tenant to this day is Land Rover, correct?
Yeah, right. Correct. Yeah.
And so that's it's a perfect market for Land Rover near Hinsdale, which has got to be.
He loves it.
It's got to be one of the top 2 or 3 affluent suburbs in the entire metro area.
That's what his father said. He said, I don't care. I'm going to rent from you. He said, I don't care what it is. I'm going to rent for you because I want to be in Hinsdale.
Right. So at what point, and so you've now got these 3 assemblages. At what point did you say that original Koshgarian building in LaGrange, even though it must have meant the world to emotionally, at what point did you feel, okay, it's time to jettison that one because our real money is here at the set in Hinsdale? And what did you do to do that?
No, here's what happened there. All of a sudden, Mom and Dad they're now up. Let's see, what year was this? Oh man, 61. They rent the sale. They sell the sales department. I'm out of there 1958. They sell the sales business to my cousin Lutfi, Lutfi, Lutfi Haleblian, and he takes on a partner, and they run the sales business out of that building. However, they do not do anything with the divided apartments, the sleeping rooms. They leave the original apartment that I grew up in as is, and they let things just deteriorate to the point where nobody wants to live there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then I think they might have had a couple of tenants, sleeping room tenants. I don't know, but I didn't pay much attention to that because my cousin was running the business, the sales business, out of Hillgrove.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there more than I was because it was very handy to him. If somebody said, "Hey, I got a problem upstairs," he was nice enough to go up and see what it was. My folks are now semi-retired. They're in Florida from late November till early May, so they let it run. Now, Mom then decides that, well, guess what, Herb, I'm going to give that building to you. Oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So 1980, 81, I said, okay, I'll take it. I gut the whole building and make it back to the original 4 apartments.
Neat.
And the 3 stores. So we got it. I spent, I think, at the time, I spent almost $200,000 remodeling it. New furnace. Every apartment had new furnace instead of a boiler downstairs feeding all the apartments, which I had to. By the way, we had a stoker, and I was the one who had to fill the stoker every morning and every night.
Oh my!
As a young person, and I had to make sure the hot water was working. We had a small hot water fired furnace, and that was my job. And God, John, if I could tell you stories that you won't believe, because during the war, when there was going to be a coal shortage, Mom and Dad figured we're going to buy as much coal as we can, so they filled 2 basements full of coal.
Oh.
And now we have to get the coal from one basement to another. But in the meantime, you had this spontaneous combustion, and you have a small fire in the coal, and we have to run downstairs and put the fire out in the stored coal that we had. But that was that part of it. So she gives me the building. I said, okay, I'll remodel it, which I did. 1980, and in 2005, I sold it to a buyer, and I think I'm pretty sure he still owns it. I got out of it because I like offices, and I like because there's 8 hours a day they're there, not like apartments. They call you up at 8:45 and said that we have a problem with a drain or something, as you probably know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're old school, Herb. Thanks again for agreeing to do this.
Sure.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Herb Koshgarian, whose parents' business, Koshgarian Rug Cleaners, so perfectly tells the story of the intersection of successful small business and commercial real estate. I'm your host, John Hunter. Digital editing and technical assistance from Monty Scott, and recorded at the studios of Chicago Public Media at Navy Pier. Join us again for people and stories from the worlds of the symphony orchestra and commercial real estate for our next episode of Stages to Success. To Success. To Success. To Success. To Success.